Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, may I call the meeting to order. We will now proceed with the review of Sierra Leone. I now have the honor to give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Franklin Bai Carbo, Attorney General and Minister of Justice of Sierra Leone, to introduce the report. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, let me start by thanking all of you for the opportunity of this meeting here this afternoon. I bring you greetings from the President and the government. For us, generally, the review couldn't have come at a better time. Sierra Leone turned 50 on the 27th of April, and we consider the process as one of serious stock-taking, as well as showcasing the steps that we have taken. Much as these are to some extent, very deep-rooted cultural traditions, government has ventured and intends to continue to press the issue of curtailing and eventually abolishing these practices. One step that has been put in place is the age of consent into any of these exercises, which has been stipulated at 18. And as a matter of fact, in terms of FGM in particular, government has embarked on a massive sensitization of the population, to which we have collaborated with the UN political vision in country, to the extent that the executive representative of the Secretary General has called all the so-called practitioners of these traditions, leaders, to a conference at which he was crowned honorary chief of that society.
I will now give the floor to Japan.
Japan would like to present following recommendations that Sierra Leone might take. Introduce an further effective system toward the elimination of FGM and develop governmental policy in this regard. Monitor reintegration of former child combatants, particularly girls, with the aim to ensure that appropriate assistance is provided and suitable measures are implemented.
And to ensure that these efforts be combined for girls with the abolition of female genital mutilation, whether it's consented or not.
We are seriously concerned by reports that more than 90% of women in Sierra Leone had gone through harmful traditional practices, and that the very young girls continue to be circumcised with serious health consequences. Therefore, Slovenia would like to recommend to Sierra Leone to take all necessary measures to prevent women and girls from suffering from harmful traditional practices
and female genital mutilation.
Germany recommends to abolish FGM.
Effective measures to eliminate the practice.
The high rate of female genital mutilation in Sierra Leone is particularly disturbing.
Primary free education for all by 2015. First of all, to intensify policies for job creation and programs for social reintegration of young people, especially those who were child soldiers during the Civil War.
the delegation of Sierra Leone again notes with appreciation the comments, suggestions and recommendations from various delegations. First of all, I view the question of FGM as one in which the government of Sierra Leone needs to redouble its efforts towards the elimination of the practice. I shall certainly convey the mood of the international community on this to the government and ensure that policies are designed to attain that objective.
We commend the government's commitment and initiatives to ensure free and compulsory formal primary education for children. We also appreciate the Child Rights Act and encourage the government to fully implement the Act.
To intensify their efforts in the protection of the rights of the child, especially those in poverty, victims of child prostitution, and children with disabilities.
To undertake efforts to enforce the prohibitions on child labour, especially in its worst forms. To explicitly prohibit by law and criminalise the use of children in hostilities by the armed forces and the recruitment and use of children in hostilities by non-state armed groups.
Mr. President, several issues have been raised, and which I think need addressing from our parts, as some of them are more or less have been overtaken by events. First is the question of recruitment of child soldiers. I don't think that applies anymore in Sierra Leone. An effective demobilization and reintegration program was implemented just immediately after the war.
Establish a strategy to seek the elimination of practices of discrimination against women and to eliminate the practice of FGM.
My delegation would like to make two recommendations to Sierra Leone. First of all, that they strengthen preventive measures and the measures to combat phenomena affecting the rights of the child, particularly child labour and violence against children. And
South Africa would like to make the following two recommendations for the consideration of the government of Sierra Leone. First, we recommend that Sierra Leone implement further policies to ensure gender equality and the promotion of women's rights and children's rights throughout society.
And finally, 6, that Sierra Leone put in place effective measures to implement the Child Rights Act and protect children from sexual and gender-based violence, abuse, exploitation, trafficking, and the worst forms of child labor. Thank you, Mr. President.
Reports of impunity, especially in cases of gender-based violence, are also of deep concern, as are reports of exploitation of child labour. And 3, develop national plans of action on children and on human rights.
my delegation recommends amendments to the law of 2007 on the rights of the child in order to bring into uniformity and to increase the minimum age for work and to ensure, particularly through deterrent and repressive measures, and in particular on the law on trafficking, to make sure that difficult physical work similar to exploitation be not entrusted to this vulnerable category of people.
We recommend that Sierra Leone continue its endeavours to reduce the illiteracy rates and eradicate the forced labour, especially child labour. Thank you for attention.
The United States recommends that the government take steps to eliminate child labor and forced labor and enhance respect for the rights of workers, particularly those in the mining sector. Ways to accomplish these objectives include amending the current labor laws to align with the internationally recognized fundamental worker rights and taking measures to effectively enforce the labor laws. Thank you, Mr. President.
and 3, to seek the assistance of the ILO to combat child labor. Thank you.
There should be increased support for ensuring education is provided for women and children.
Norway is concerned about illiteracy among women and girls, which jeopardise future job possibilities and their active involvement in the development of Sierra Leone. We recommend that Sierra Leone implement measures to ensure girls' and women's access to all levels of education and ensure a higher level of women's participation in public life.
Also the government of Sierra Leone for the introduction of the Free Health Care Initiative, which was intended to improve maternal and child health and drastically reduce maternal and infant mortality. As education is the backbone of further development of the country, Turkey welcomes the efforts of the government of Sierra Leone regarding its aim to increase access to education for all its citizens with a view to achieving universal primary education by 2015. In this regard, we recommend that special attention be given particularly to the education of girls and women.
The free healthcare service, that was introduced in 2010 by government and will continue. There are severe constraints, one of which is the question of the brain drain of our young doctors and other medical personnel that we train. We are looking at ways by which that can be ameliorated. In the next week or so, we shall open our second teaching hospital, and we intend to increase the rate at which we produce medical personnel. The girl child and the annual education budget. The girl child priority has always been given in the last 6 to 7 years to encouraging the girl child to stay longer in school, and in fact, by way of affirmative action, certain incentives are provided both to family and the child concerned. And that is a continuing program of government under the Sababu project, which is Sababu meaning opportunity project, that we have been implementing. And in education generally, government has recently caused a commission to look at the education system in its entirety, and it has come up with some very concrete recommendations which are now being implemented by government post haste. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.